get people outside and to look more carefully at the natural world.
There are now more mobile phones on Earth than people on our planet, and new technologies can help solve major challenges.
Every single data point has a human story.
Now communities can use science to tackle local problems.
The state doesn't come out and say, you gotta clean this up. So we started the Bucket Brigade.
They're linking sensors and citizens to find solutions.
I'm learning about toxins. I'm learning how to teach other people to do what I do so they can do it for themselves.
Asthma is a lonely disease. The propeller sensors are going to revolutionize the asthma treatment.
Collaborating via the crowd can save time, save money, and save lives. We're surely smarter together. I'm Waleed Abdelhadi, host of The Crowd and the Cloud. I've studied Earth's ice sheets from satellites and aircraft, and I was NASA chief scientist at the time when Curiosity landed on Mars. So I know big data and big science. But I'm also convinced that citizen-generated data has an important role. No longer is science something only done by professionals in labs. No more is data just the property of corporations and government. For years, you've watched science on public television. Now, you're invited to do science.
The Crowd. The Cloud.
The Crowd and the Cloud.
The Crowd and the Cloud.
Even big data starts small.
So who's the crowd? Well, that's you, me, all of us. Some are passionate sportsmen and women out in nature and working to keep it pristine. Others are volunteers on the Jersey Shore, surveying horseshoe crabs and collecting important data that shapes conservation policies. What's the cloud? That's shorthand for our connected world, all the data we share when we upload information, and the digital traces we leave behind when we use our mobile phones to communicate, check traffic, take photos, or pass the time with games. Put the crowd together with the cloud, and you're living in a new world with some incredible opportunities. This program is called Even Big Data Starts Small. We're looking at how individuals, regular people, can contribute to some pretty important activities, like alerting neighbors to flash floods, or helping people far away recover from disaster. We call this citizen science, but those two words cover a very broad range of activities. Audubon's Christmas bird count started in 1900. Now tens of thousands participate each year, sharing species numbers via apps and the web. I saw this firsthand in the Florida Everglades. And that bird count data reveals trends in climate over time.
It's data that has been available to the scientific community, which has been consistent for many, many, many years.
Some projects are recent startups. SmartFin puts sensors on surfboards to capture temperature and ocean acidification data in turbulent nearshore waves.
The data will move from the fin to your phone and then from the phone to our servers. And there you have a surfer just hitting a few buttons has done legitimate science.
Then there's crowdsourcing. We'll see how the crowd can map cities after an earthquake and map blood vessels in living brains, searching for a cure for Alzheimer's. These kinds of projects speed up research by putting more eyes on issues, cutting the time to make discoveries. Look for URLs indicating where to find more information on our website. In 1997, a tragic flood hit here in the foothills of the Colorado Rockies, and no one saw it coming. But one man had the idea to enlist citizen scientists in what's become an army of weather watchers to help reduce the risks of this ever happening again.
Where we're seated here today is very close to where a very, very, very heavy localized storm occurred back in 1997. Up to 14 inches of rain is what was about to make a major disaster.
Spring Creek, normally a placid stream, became a raging, deadly torrent.
People here weren't aware of this huge surge of water that was about to arrive. Within a matter of minutes, a culvert unplugged, water rushed through underneath, water flowed over the top of the railroad, swept a train, a few cars off.
It's just right to our doorstep. No warning, no nothing.
I was asleep when I woke up and now everything was floating away.
Neighbors living close by were astonished.
It was only about a half a mile away that the 5 people who perished in that flood were living. We got very little rain.
We didn't really have much indication that there was lethal flooding going on very close to our house.
It was something that was just unbelievably startling to know that people were dying just right down the hill from all this water.
The 1997 flood and the extreme variability of local weather also shocked professional meteorologists like Nolan Duskin. He'd assumed NOAA's newly developed weather radar would provide sufficient warnings, so he'd chosen not to sound an alarm.
There was this great sense that technology was going to answer all of our challenges when it came to flood prediction, flood warning, seeing the helicopters the next morning hovering over, the sound that always tells you you've had a disaster, and knowing that I could have done something, and that has stuck with me.
It's still drizzling, actually.
What Nolan and colleagues started is now called CoCoRaHS, the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network.
How much?
Looks like about 100.
Today, citizen scientists all across North America make daily measurements of precipitation, just like the Deschamps family.
We've been doing this for, 17 years now, and it's become such a regular part of our routine. No burden of having to do this.
Zeros matter, traces matter.
CoCoRaHS includes more than 20,000 volunteers, extending north to Canada's snowy maritime provinces and down south through sometimes dry regions like Texas.
I'm actually a 7th generation rancher, come from a long line of ranchers. Been around ranches from the time I was knee-high to a grasshopper till now.
Close to Midland, West Texas, Skylar Flake has been a CoCoRaHS observer for 6 years.
After we get done, feeding horses and checking on stuff, around here that needs to be tended to in the morning, walk out here every morning and check this rain gauge. See if we were lucky enough to receive any, precipitation throughout the night. A lot of zeros here, but we did have 3 good days of rain back in the, the middle of March.
To ensure uniform measurements, each observer pays $30 for a standard rain gauge.
Without rain, we're out of business. Our livelihood is directly affected by how much rain the good Lord blesses us with. It's pretty easy to have one rainstorm dump an inch on one end of this ranch and not get anything on the far west end of this, just because of how the rainfall came. If there's more of these CoCoRaHS gauges around, it's easier to see the weather pattern instead of one National Weather Service station that just collects the rainfall that falls at that station.
Too little rain or too much rain? Both are problems when you can't see what's coming.
Well, on the night of July 28th of 1997, there was only one rain gauge in the middle of town and a couple on the edge of town. None of them were reporting real-time weather conditions. Our goal was to make sure that if another storm like that happened, that we would have an immediate sense of where the rain was falling and a way of communicating that information quickly and efficiently.
In addition to regular daily precipitation reports, CoCoRaHS observers are also trained to monitor extreme weather conditions while they're occurring. In real time, their reports reach the National Weather Service so that NOAA can issue timely flood warnings. One of the first forecasters to see the value of this new source of data was Chad Gimmestad.
We're constantly evaluating, do I need to issue a warning for this storm or not? Right. If we think the storm's going to become severe, we want to get a warning out as quickly as possible.
While CoCoRaHS started with measuring rainfall, the H in its name stands for hail. observers make standardized hail pads, styrofoam covered with foil, to record the number and size of hailstones, from grains of rice up to golf balls and even bigger. They're encouraged to report large hail right away. Forecasters now pay special attention to these reports of significant weather, since large hail is an indicator of tornadoes and strong storms, which also show up on radar.
The radar is telling me is there's this much energy return from the radar, but that's not the same as having the human with the eyeballs and the ruler, because that human knows exactly what I want to know. The same radar picture could be half-inch diameter hail, or it could be 1.5-inch diameter hail. And now, now an alarm goes off. So I click on this alarm, and I see the report right here. It says Morgan County, Colorado, Fort Morgan. It gives me the latitude and longitude. Tells me his largest hail is 1.25 inches in diameter. My criteria for issuing a warning is 1 inch, so that means I need to have a warning out. And in just a few clicks of the button, I can draw this box on the map where I want the warning to be. And I'll quickly click the hazard, so I can say like 60-mile-an-hour winds, and here's the 1.25-inch diameter hail. Hit create text, and I get a window that pops up with the text of the warning right here. And as soon as I press that button, it goes out to the news media, to NOAA Weather Radio. If it's a flash flood warning, it'll interrupt the programming on most commercial radio stations and cable TV outlets in the warning area.
So in effect, one person can make an observation, and within just a couple minutes, that can result in a banner across the bottom of a television screen with a warning?
Absolutely. The whole point of that is that person is helping out their neighbors by sharing that information.
CoCoRaHS started with rainfall and a focus on Colorado. But then observers suggested more.
Once we started with rain, people said, if we can measure rain, we can measure snow. And I knew enough about snow to say that's a lot harder.
In Canada's maritime province of New Brunswick, observers Dan Matthews and Leslie Grattan have documented snowfall during a long, hard winter.
It's certainly not been a typical winter here. Christmas, it was plus 12 degrees.
Raining.
And raining. And by New Year's Day, we had 12 centimeters of ice on the pond, and we're able to have our polar dip.
Then the snow started.
Without Leslie, I'd have a hard job keeping the measurements going. She's got lots of stamina, loves using the snowblower.
You usually wait until after the snow stops before you start digging, because he who shovels early shovels twice.
The process is a 365-day-a-year program, and you trudge out in the morning, and then you're all bundled up because it's minus 20. Then I do my snow calculations, read the readings off the snow posts, get the snow depth. That stake over there is 48 inches tall, and there's 3 inches sticking out of the ground.
Snow is a more complicated beast because it varies in its water content, its density. It's blown around by wind. And we have had volunteers diligently digging through deep layers of old icy snow or fresh snow to identify not only how deep is it, but how much water is in that snow. There's a big difference between 2 feet of fluff and 2 feet of aged ice.
I dig down, and the bottom 10 inches of the snow is big snow crystal, snow grains. Well, to the scientists, that means something. That means that the system of thaw is starting to develop. You know, all this information is important, and it's not reported by a machine. When you get your sample in your tube, you take it in, and you put it on the scale, and you weigh it, and you're done.
Just as with hail and rain, increasing the number of data points dramatically improves the quality of forecasts.
You won't make the world news, but that sort of thing enhances the weather reports. You look at the map, and there's thousands of dots all over, and you're part of it. You're making a contribution.
All of those dots are individuals submitting daily data, filling in gaps through which extreme weather events might otherwise flow unnoticed, until it's too late. Add to those citizen science observations big data from satellites and supercomputers, and you've got a powerful early warning system. In 2013, another dangerous storm hit the foothills. This time, extreme rainfall impacted communities all along the Front Range, including Boulder, where NOAA's forecast offices are situated. Floodwaters were out of control. Half a year's rain fell in just a couple of hours.
In the 2013 flood, we had a lot of reports from CoCoRaHS observers here around Boulder, and so we were able to ramp up what we were doing quickly.
We had close to 1,300 volunteers submitting rainfall reports. We were able to have a map day by day as that storm was progressing.
We worked with the emergency managers to help them understand how serious it was. That got them moving faster. Using the radar data and the CoCoRaHS data, we were able to help them pinpoint, here's where it's the worst, and they can go evacuate those areas first. And in those cases, sometimes a few minutes does matter.
Time is really critical, and what you're doing is you're giving time.
Any observation from any of our observers could in fact be the observation of the big storm. And maybe those of us who suffered back in 1997 from a flood that we were ill prepared for, maybe we really are making a difference, and that's the biggest satisfaction for me.
Up there is where the floodwaters reached in 1997. Today, Spring Creek is once again a placid, gentle stream. And thanks to a network of citizen scientists using instruments like these, there's a better early warning system against future floods. But crowdsourcing can also help people respond more quickly after a disaster, working together online with crisis mapping.
Okay, that video actually goes on for another 45 minutes or so. I do encourage each of you to take a look at that. I can send that link out to everyone that's on the call, and then when you have time, you can take a look at it. It's a pretty interesting, very interesting video. All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch. Start sharing, do a short presentation, and which is more or less an introduction to CoCoRaHS, and then we'll jump into the training. All right, as I said before, we are having the topic of Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network this evening. And the interesting thing about CoCoRaHS is that it is now in all 50 states, Canada, and then even other parts of the world. So it's what started back in 1997 has grown into a global effort. So what is it? This is the mission statement. It's a nonprofit organization that's community-based and made up of volunteers of different ages and different backgrounds, and they're working together to measure and map precipitation in liquid and solid form. They use low-cost measurement tools, stressing training and education, and utilizing an interactive website, which hopefully we'll have time to take a look at that. The aim is to provide the highest quality data for natural resource education and research applications. What are some of the goals of CoCoRaHS? provide accurate, high-quality precipitation data, act as an umbrella for one-stop precipitation information nationwide. The ambition is to increase the density of precipitation data available throughout the country by encouraging volunteer weather observers, as well as by collaborating with existing precipitation networks. Increase community awareness about our weather by inspiring and encouraging citizens to participate in meteorological science and have fun doing so as citizen science. Provide enrichment activities in water and weather resources for teacher, educators, and the community at large. And one of the things that I thought was interesting when I was preparing for this presentation was that some of their educational research resources out there are geared towards 4-H. And as some of you may know, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension is the agency that sponsors the 4-H and youth development program here in the state of Texas and other states across the nation. So if you have know a county agent or have some rapport with the county agent, you might mention that to them, because that could be a pretty interesting project and a good way to expand the network in your community or county. And hopefully we'll take a look at that. So this is a map of who uses the data. It's pretty lengthy list of folks, but you can see the National Weather Service, as we saw in the video. It's important that they get that observer data. Hydrologists, those are folks that work with the rivers. Other meteorologists that may be working for municipalities or different agencies. Emergency managers, all the way down to the ag industry, engineers, and then even outdoor and recreational enthusiasts. And then on the right-hand side, you have teachers and students. So once you're trained, because this is going to be a training, you'd collect data using the low-cost measurement tools. And in this particular this picture is the 4-inch high-capacity rain gauge. It is standardized. It's what all volunteers use that are involved in the CoCoRaHS network, and that's to standardize the data. They've done research and looking at electronic rain gauges, and they are not as good as having a human being on the ground interpreting that data. So only this particular gauge is what's being used by the CoCoRaHS network, and that's important. Of course, training, twice a year training is encouraged. The training slide deck, which I will be presenting, is online on the CoCoRaHS website. And so you are encouraged, volunteers are encouraged to review that slide deck in the spring and in the fall. Another tool that they use is this hill pad, which in the video you saw can be made. There are videos on the CoCoRaHS website on how to make a hill pad. I kind of looked into Texas's situation with regard to hill pads, and that is not currently an active program. So, I mean, that's an opportunity there potentially. But you'll have to run that by the state coordinator, because those pads need to be dropped off at certain points. And then the training is so important to ensure that there's accurate, high quality data. So as a CoCoRaHS volunteer and citizen science, you would be reporting daily observations on the website. And when I get into it a little further, it's really simple to do. But basically, you'd go in and you would fill out the application, submit it. You'd have to have your 4-inch rain gauge. You'd mount it according to the instructions, which I'll be providing in the training. And then you can start entering your data onto the website. The ultimate goal and hope of the CoCoRaHS network is to have one observer for every square mile in urban areas and one observer for every 36 square miles in rural areas. So to become a volunteer for the CoCoRaHS organization, it's 5 easy steps. You'd sign up on their webpage, and we'll walk you through that, or I'll walk you through that. Obtain your 4-inch plastic rain gauge. Can show you where that can be ordered from. There's several sources, and that's on their website. However, when I checked it recently, they are behind in shipping due to, I believe, spring break. So there's a disclaimer on the website, but you can still place your order and they'll get those rain gauges to you. If you are representing a chapter, it's cheaper by the dozen. So you can buy a case of rain gauges. And if you have members within your chapter that are interested in adding additional rain gauges in your community or county, then that would be a better way to go. You'd save shipping on that, and then the individuals could purchase those rain gauges for the cost and the associated taxes, or perhaps the chapter could purchase the case and distribute those. That's what we're planning on doing with my chapter, is looking at purchasing a case and then having our master naturalists distribute those out. You want to view the training slides, or in this case, attend a training session, which you're doing currently, or you can contact the state or regional coordinator. That information is on the website, the CoCoRaHS website. You want to set up the gauge in a good location in your backyard, or wherever you want to put it, open field, backyard, or if you're in an urban area, set it up accordingly in an urban area, and then start observing those, the precipitation and reporting daily online. And there is an app available that you can use to report via your phone, your smartphone. This is Texas State Coordinator Bill Runyon. I will leave this slide up so y'all can jot down the email address and Twitter if y'all Twitter, if you tweet. Bill was very instrumental in encouraging me to go forward with this and giving me permission to borrow some of the images and content of his slides for this very short presentation. But it's all available because the ultimate goal is to expand the network and get the better data. So if you and your chapter want to host some sort of training in your community for people in your county, that's certainly an option for you to do as well. Bill wanted me to make sure I hit on these key points, and I'll even come back and throw those up on the slide, or even just send this presentation out in an email blast. So some of the key points, which will also be addressed a little bit in the training, is that it's daily reporting is critical, as is consistency. So The suggested times are between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. Data outside of that, after 9, isn't posted, so it's critical to get it within that window. The training video actually says 7 a.m. is the ideal time, but you have a window to work with. Zeros are critical as measurable rainfall amount. It's how drought and drought severity is determined by meteorologists. So report your zeros. Daily precipitation reports are for a 24-hour period of time and not to exceed 24 hours. And we'll go over the exception with that. The day the gauge is read is the day the precipitation is reported. So while you're recording the data, in a logbook, for instance, be sure that you get that information entered into your online account so it can be added. And once you enter it in, it appears on the map. Training slideshow should be reviewed twice a year. Touched on that, fall and again in the spring. So consider this the spring training. When freezing or frozen precipitation is forecast or expected, go ahead and remove the funnel and the small diameter tube before the event. Several reasons for that. If it's snow or hail, for instance, then they're not going to, a frozen, snow would not fit through that funnel into the collection thing. But if you remove the funnel and the inner tube, which we'll see a close-up of, that would allow hail or snow to enter that tube, and then you could record that precipitation. When heavy rain is happening or expected, do try to empty the gauge and write down the reading before going to bed, and then just make it accumulative for your morning reading. These gauges will hold just over 11 inches. However, that amount can be exceeded during a severe weather event. So do empty that. And then lastly, thank you for your interest. Don't go away. We're going to start the training here in a moment. Okay, so we're going to start the slides with the training slide deck. This is approximately 73 slides. So I will be moving through them rapidly. I'm going to check the chat real quick though, see if there's any questions. Okay, I'm not seeing questions, but if you have any as I go through the training slide deck, let me know. Just put those into the chat. Hopefully everyone will be able to see the first slide, training slideshow, with the quote, because every drop counts. All right, so I'm going to skip over these because we've already focused quite a bit on what CoCoRaHS is, and y'all should be aware of that by now. That is information that was in that shorter presentation. This is the web address, so make note of it so you can visit the site after this presentation or when you get an opportunity to do that. And then here again, hopefully we'll be able to review some of that information together before we close for the evening. The information that you do put in, it's viewable, immediately viewable once you enter it. So that's a good thing. You can see that in the image on the left, the national picture, but this map is interactive. You can zoom into your county and see how many stations or how many CoCoRaHS volunteers are within your county or your location to see. I mean, I was surprised for Brazoria County. I think we have 2, which we certainly could use a lot more for sure. Why CoCoRaHS? Well, precipitation is important, and also it's highly variable. You know, sometimes there's odd occurrences where it can be raining on one side of the street, but not on the other side of the street, or raining up the street, but not down the street. So that's an example of how variable rainfall can be. It can also be, as we'll see further down, severe weather event where it's dropping, 12 inches of rain in hours, potentially causing flash flooding. Yet all the surrounding areas isn't receiving any of that rainfall. So the more gauges out there, the better. Measurements from many sources are not always accurate, especially snow. So there are training videos on the website. If you're in an area where there's snowfall, where you can actually learn how to measure snow accurately. So those are kind of self-study videos as well. And also there's hardly any information about hailstones that's being collected. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, these storm reports can save lives. So, I mean, that reason alone is one to get involved. Here's an example that mentioned. This is New Braunfels. So in this one area that's circled, you have 7 inches, just over 7 inches of rain falling in one area at one observer's station. And yet, if you look around at the other stations, it's a fraction of that. It's 100th, 200ths of an inch. I mean, so, these isolated downpours do happen, and they can cause localized flooding and can affect property and lives. So the main focus is quality precipitation data, and then also educational opportunities to help the public better understand weather and climate. And here again, the website has a wealth of information for you as a master naturalist or member of the public to go and look and download and read and learn a little bit more. We're just focusing on precipitation for this presentation and just touching a little bit on snow, but that information's out there for you to take a look at. We've seen this slide before, but all different agencies and people use this sort of information in forecasting and early warning systems to the public. Also, NOAA's weather forecast, they use the data. Hurricane Center, this slide on the left, this is showing precipitation accumulation. The green colors are 0 to 1. The warm colors all the way up to red is 20 to 25 inches, and this is Tropical Storm Faye. So you can see the disparity in the amount of rainfall accumulation across Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. But some areas received a lot, and then some areas didn't receive hardly any. So here again, that's the importance of that. But that data is being collected by observers on the ground and being submitted and then being picked up and used in that forecasting as a forecasting tool for meteorologists. The National Operational Hydrologic Remote Sensing Center, they use that information, the snowfall data, and over 50% of their snow observation reports come from CoCoRaHS observers. So that just shows you how important people are that are doing those observations and getting that information. All right, section 1. This is setting up your equipment and measuring, and then measuring the precipitation. So in this section, you're going to learn how and where to place your gauge and hail pad. or, we may skip over that since Texas doesn't have that, depending on our time constraints. Explain how to measure rainfall with your gauge, illustrate how to observe hail, and then describe measuring snow depth and water content. All right, placement of your gauge. The location is going to be key to collecting quality data. Places you don't want to place your gauge: in the lower left-hand picture under a rain outflow of a rain gutter. That's not a good idea. The worst place is leave it in the box. So if you order a gauge, be sure to get it out of the box and get it mounted. You want to avoid placing it under trees or structures, even if it may be convenient for you to take that reading. Be sure to get it out away from your structure or under a tree, and we'll see some examples of that. Avoid placing your gauge near sprinklers, any steep slopes, pets or animals, or even bears. Avoid anything that would artificially increase or decrease your catch gauge. So in this example, they're showing it's mounted on a fence, and if you had a strong wind blowing, the fence would act as a barrier, causing the wind and rain to lift, and potentially add additional precipitation to the gauge, whereas it normally wouldn't have occurred had it been in an open area. Or it might reduce the amount in your gauge. So do look at your yard or an area where you can place your gauge for the best location. Here's some suggestions for residential, rural, and then urban. So distance from obstacles. In an open area, you want to be twice as far from obstacles as they're high. So, that obviously is going to be an observation you have to make, and could be subjective, but you don't have to get a necessarily tape measure and climb the tree or building to take that measurement, but you can estimate fairly closely with that. In developed areas, you want to be as far from obstacles as they're high. If you're placing your gauge between trees, you want to place it equidistant from the nearest trees. And here again, this slide deck is on the website, so you can always download it and review it again. Height above the ground. In open areas, place the gauge approximately 2 feet off the ground. Whereas in a developed area, you want to have the top of the gauge approximately 5 feet off the ground. You want to make sure that the gauge is level. And the reason for that is this inner tube is 1 inch of rain. This fills up first and then overflows into the larger outer tube that holds the majority of the rainfall. And so if your gauge is mounted at a slant or crooked, then there's a potential to lose some of that data and have it overflow early. Also in this picture, they're showing that you should bevel the top of the post. In this case, to me, it looks like a 4x4 post. So the idea is by cutting this at a slant, you're reducing rain splashing into the gauge. When you eventually collect some rain, this is how you're going to measure it. So as I said earlier, 1 inch of rain would fill the inner tube, and it looks totally different than 1 inch of rain in the outer tube. And if you can see that clearly on the right-hand image, the inner tube, that's 1 inch of rain, and then the outer tube. Be careful when you're recording your measurements. You want to make sure you get the decimal point in the correct place. 0.40 or 41 hundredths of an inch versus 4 inches. And then as a CoCoRaHS volunteer, you're asking to report to the nearest 100th of an inch. Don't round up. So if you measured 0.98 inches, record that amount and not round it up to 1 inch. So when should you take your observations? As I said earlier in the introduction, 7 a.m. is preferred. However, you can record that data between 4:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. That's okay. Other times would not appear on the map. They're accepted, but they would not appear on the map. So it's up to you as a CoCoRaHS observer when you wish to report. But if you select 7 a.m., for instance, be consistent in reporting your data at the same time every day. When you read your gauge, so here's some common situations you may encounter, and that being the most common observation will likely be 0, but please report those because they're important, and as mentioned earlier, they do help with drought forecasting, drought severity, and drought in general. And taking a look at the map here, this is the drought of 2011. If you look at this map of Texas, all these little dots here are rain gauges sponsored or being hosted by the CoCoRaHS observers. And normally the gray is 0, the purple would be trace. And as you can see, Texas is as dry as a bone during the 2011 drought. Just not any rain. All right, so if you get a few drops in the inner tube, you can record it as a T for trace. And showing you an example with these arrows, just no rain, no precipitation collected at the bottom of the tube, and reading up on the scale, it's just on the sides of the acrylic inner tube. Between T and 1/10 of an inch, and in this case, that's 4/100th of an inch in the gauge. So when you read the amount of liquid precipitation in your gauge, and you're going to be reading it off of the center tube, you want to read the level at the meniscus. And the meniscus is the curved, where the liquid curves up due to the surface tension. So always read the bottom of the meniscus when you're making your daily rain measurements. In this case, this slide, this is a nice rain. It's right at 1/2 inch. And this would be a really good rain with 1 inch. And you can see how it fills up this center tube. So what observers are being asked to do, if there's very heavy rain or snow falling, then please submit a significant weather report via the CoCoRaHS website and do that ASAP. As we saw in the video, that report goes immediately to the National Weather Service office so that advisories can be released to the public and to the media. And you would just fill in this form. This is a picture of what you'd find. It says significant weather report, and then you would input this information and then submit it. So in 2008, pointing to this red blob on the map, this is in Massachusetts, and this is a significant event. And that was that significant event caused some urban flooding, and they were able to get warnings out. It was during rush hour, and they were able to get warnings out, and people that got stranded rescued. And then this would be a lot of rain. We could use some of that, this right now. Maybe we'll get some tomorrow. So what do you do when the 1-inch center tube overflows into the outer larger tube? This is how you handle that. What you're going to do is you're going to record your 1-inch of rain in the center tube and make that 1-inch, and then you're going to use your funnel and put it over the mouth of the center tube, and then you're going to pour the larger, the volume from the larger tube into the smaller one, and take those measurements that way. And you'll continue doing that until you measure all the rain and record that data. And this is what it would look like. 1-inch, and then this amount was 3.77. So you can see that it's just a matter of adding your rainfall. So observing hail, as I said, Texas currently doesn't have an active program. It may have at one time, but I didn't see it on the website. But it is possible to submit online hail reports and do that as soon as possible. Those reports do go to the National Weather Service, and it gives them information. So hail comes in sizes, the grain, the grain of a rice, or they can be as large as a golf ball or baseball. So obviously those larger sizes are a lot more damaging to structures and potentially to people. And you can see in this particular case, this is out of the Houston Galveston office. So they're reporting that the storm was moving, a strong thunderstorm was moving northwest out of Jackson County towards the east-southeast at 15 miles per hour, and it was creating hail up to 1/2 inch in diameter. Measuring snow, that's not really a problem for the southern part of Texas. Could be up in North Texas, up in the Panhandle, and then the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I think they could tend to get more ice and snow than we do down here, but this is a quick view of how to measure snow. All right, so there's more detailed information on the website if you have an interest in that, but here's how you would do it in a few slides. So liquid water, content of snow. So 2 ways in which to measure snow is measured is 1, either liquid water content of snow from the gauge or from a core sample, or you can do it by the depth of the snow. And in which case, if you're doing it by the depth, that would be in a 24-hour snowfall accumulation. And so it would be as you would put a platform on top of the existing snow and then reread it 24 hours later to see how much accumulated overnight or during the 24-hour period. And then here again, you can learn more about measuring snow by viewing the slides on the website. All right, reporting observations. You're going to want to go to the CoCoRaHS website. Here it is up here, the URL. You can either select join CoCoRaHS in this yellow box here, or you can come over here to the sidebar and join CoCoRaHS here. You would fill out the information that pops up and then submit that. It's an application. And if we have time, hopefully we'll take a look at that. Once you do that, you get your Once you do that, then you can begin, if you have your 4-inch rain gauge mounted and available, you can begin reporting immediately. And you'd go to My Data and log in to your account, and you can begin submitting that data. And you're going to enter the total precipitation measured in your gauge. In this case, it's in hundredths, so it's 0.59 inches. And that's how you'd record it. Any observation notes are important, so you can always include some additional notes under this field, observation notes, and that's helpful information. But you'd enter the date, what time you're reporting, and then the precipitation amount. And if it's a measurable amount, enter that, or if it's trace or 0, then you'd enter that. And I already mentioned using the notes section for additional information that you might want to put in your observation. In this case, they're putting fast-moving thunderstorm, dumper over 1/2 inch of rain, many tree branches down due to the wind. So that provides meteorologists and forecasters important information and then you submit your report. Once you enter this data, hit submit, and then within a few minutes, your information shows up on that map. All right, so if you want to see your observation on the maps, you'd click on your state. In this case, they selected Florida. And then you can see, based in your county, where your location would be, and then you can view your data, and it actually gives you the amount of precipitation you reported. You can also get that data in a table form, and that's by clicking the view data. So here's some more observations, a sample map from Fort Collins, Colorado. And you can just see some of the variability in this image of different precipitation in the area, right? And then here again, the table data as well, and your observations. So you can have that information for your records as well. So for information on what's happening in your state, you want to visit your state website. Texas does have a newsletter. I think it was updated was 2022, but we'll take a look at that just a minute. And then other important reports: hail report, significant weather report, monthly zeros, multi-day precipitation report, condition monitoring, and depending on that, we'll breeze through this information. Here again, the hail report, if you have a hail pad and collecting hailfall data, or if it hails at your house and you run out there and grab some hailstones, you can measure those and then report that data and into the website. And you might want to mention, of course, that you're not doing it, that you're an observer, and you would put but you're not using a hail pad, for instance, for that information. Monthly zeros. So you can pull up a map and you can see how many times reported zero precipitation. That will likely be the most common amount that you report daily is 0. But don't let that discourage you, because it does rain and you'll actually be reporting other amounts as well. Significant weather reports, we talked about that, but here's where you'd find it on the CoCoRaHS website on the sidebar. Multi-day events, we'll talk about that. So if you're away on vacation or out of town, this is what you would want to do in order to report your data. All you have to do is put in the dates that you're gone, and then you record what was in the gauge the day you return, and then that's what you report. So on the website, it gives a range. So from May 20th, 2014 to May 27th, 2014, the time they reported was 8 a.m. And then this is the amount for a multi-day precipitation in inches, you know, just over 2 inches. And that's how you report that. Condition monitoring. I'm not going to say much about this particular slide, other than, I mean, if you can report this information, you can make a condition monitor, but there is a guidelines on the website for how to do this. So this particular presentation doesn't have a lot of information on that, but the guidelines are on the website in a PDF, and you can learn more about that if you do want to report condition monitoring. Section 3, these are frequently asked questions. And do I have to be home every day to participate in CoCoRaHS? And we already saw that the answer is no. You report when you're able. If you're gone, you may leave your gauge outside and report a multi-day total when you return. What if I don't have a good place to put my gauge? The response is few people have ideal locations. Do your best. Send site photographs if possible to help interpret the results. What if it hails when I'm not home? The answer is we still would like your hail pad. Report as much information as you can from friends and neighbors. Do I report morning dew that has collected in my rain gauge? And the response is no. Dew is not precipitation, but you may note the dew in the comments section. How long is my commitment to CoCoRaHS? Ideally, you'd want to spend 1 season, but the longer you contribute, the more valuable the data becomes. So it's a minimal 1-year commitment, but longer would be better. I have an automated weather station with the rain gauge. Can I use that instead of the CoCoRaHS gauge? And the answer is, in order to accurately compare CoCoRaHS reports, all observers must use the 4-inch CoCoRaHS gauge. Automated rain gauges tend to underestimate a heavy rainfall and do not accurately measure water content of snow. You're welcome to place the automated gauge beside the 4-inch gauge to compare measurements, but report what falls into the 4-inch gauge. And here again, that's standardizing the observations across the entire nation by using one set size gauge. Can I file my observations on my mobile phone? Absolutely, you can. There is an app, and it's available for iPhones and Android phones. So just go to your where you download your apps or purchase your apps and search for CoCoRaHS. And then where can you go for additional information? Well, check out the website, CoCoRaHS.org. It has a variety of resources to connect that you can connect to from its homepage: educational, YouTube videos, blog, messages of the day, state newsletter, measuring evapotranspiration, climate guide for master gardeners, just to name a few. You can also connect to CoCoRaHS via social media such as Facebook and Twitter. You're now ready to measure precipitation for the CoCoRaHS network. And I believe that's the last slide in my presentation. And I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare the CoCoRaHS website so we can take a look at that quickly. I have 750. All right, so here's the CoCoRaHS website. Let's see. Let's take a look at Texas. We can zoom in. You can see all the measurements across the nation. Zooming into Texas. I'm biased. I'm going to focus on Brazoria County and surrounding counties. But let's just take a look. So in Brazoria County, we have 3 observations, 3 locations that are being observed. Fort Bend has a few more. Wharton County, Matagorda County. Matagorda has 1, only a couple in Wharton. Not that many more in Galveston County. So, you know, one of the objectives of this training and offering it to master naturalists is to get more master naturalists involved in the CoCoRaHS network and reporting data, because there's some pretty good gaps in our general coastal area. Now here's the cool thing, is that it's March Madness. So check this out. So this March Madness is signing up new volunteers. I had no clue this was going on when I started planning this presentation, but it's running from March 1st through March 31st. And I think this is phenomenal. I mean, look at Minnesota, 416 new stations have gone into place. When I checked this before, it was 300 and I think 16. So they've added 100 more stations. So they're number 1. Texas down here, we're not last, but we have 33 new stations. So I encourage all of you to on the call, and we had roughly 91 people sign up and were in attendance. So, I mean, if just 20 of us or 30 of us participate, we can really jump Texas up above North Carolina, potentially Ohio, maybe even South Carolina. So we still have time to do that. It's just a matter of you getting the equipment and then registering on the website. So I thought that was pretty neat, and that's my challenge to each of you. You can see across the top here, you know, my data entry, maps. I'm not going to spend time on here. You have the website. You can go visit and check it out at your leisure. Here's all the resources you can check out for additional information. Let's see, where do you get your stuff from? So down here, the very last link is the CoCoRaHS store. This is where I ordered my gauge from, weatheryourway.com, and you can click on that. Kind of a neat thing about this, I don't know about the other stores. I'm not endorsing this one over any of the others. But this is the one I looked at, is that they do sell the individual components. Maybe the other stores do as well, but here again, I did not look at that. The gauges are $35 for sale. That's the complete gauge, inner acrylic tube, outer acrylic tube, funnel, mounting gear. You'll have to supply your own post. You can order signs if you want. You can order decals. Sometimes, you know, you can order things to clean the inner tube, but that's just one site that has it. Very, very easy to order, and I think they got it to me within a week. So there was a disclaimer here about shipping, that they're backlogged. Oh, it's up here at the top. So if you order now, the shipping will be a little bit delayed. But check that out at your leisure if you're interested in getting yourself a gauge. And then let's see. Some of the other places you can also order it, but do be sure that it is that 4-inch gauge. And so check these out. and take a look at those. But you can even read more about the approved gauges for CoCoRaHS. Let's see. Information on condition monitoring, I already mentioned that. But then here are the resources, education, training, slideshows. So you can click on this. You can select this PDF, getting started. This is, I believe, the presentation that I just presented you. So you can always come to the CoCoRaHS website, access that slide deck, and get a refresher course at your in the fall. You can also look at some of this other information about winter precipitation, ice accretion, so forth and so on. So still lots of good information out here for you to take a look at. All right, I have 3 minutes before 8. I do tend to end on time. I will do a quick perusing for questions. Okay, one of the questions is, do we get registered on the website? Yeah, you can go and get registered on the website. Just go to the website. Let's take a look at that real quick since I have it open. Let me make sure I'm still sharing. I think I am. Take a look at that real quick. So here's what you'll see. Here's the information you'll fill out. First name, last name, home phone, day phone, email, confirm your email. Do you have daily access to the internet? Yes or no. Your address, what state, which county, city, zip code, etc. So pretty easy to do. Station information, you can fill this out. They're asking for latitude and longitude and in decimal degrees. So most handheld GPS receivers, you can get that information. Or you could even, using something like Google Maps or Google Earth, you can acquire that information as well at your house. Postal address, and whether you're over 18, are you 18 or older? Yes or no. What's your age? Parent, guardian's name, grade. Because here again, this is a project, a citizen science project open to all ages. So you don't have to be 18, but I guess you do have to list your guardian, parent, or guardian. You'd select which time you're planning on emptying the gauge. And after completing this, it says, yes, I would like to help. Please give the names and ages of others who would help. You take rain and hail measurements if you have people helping you. You did attend a training session, so you'd check that and you'd hit submit application. That's it. That's as easy as that. Then you would, so you can sign up, you can get your rain gauge. The official store is backlogged on shipping, but they'll get them out as fast as they can. But once you do get your gauge, you can mount it and then begin reporting your data. All right, so I am going to purchase a case. These are for Master Naturalist in the Cradle of Texas. I am going to purchase a case of gauges. That there's 12. I've already had one person or a couple of people commit to me that they would buy them from me out of my program area account. So you will not have to pay shipping. But you will have to pay the associated taxes and the cost of the gauge. But I will order those ASAP and then have those available. So if y'all can shoot me an email and tell me whether you're interested. If we have 24 people interested in the Cradle of Texas, I'll order 2 cases. But I need a commitment, at least an email commitment from folks that are interested in that. Another question, with the rain gauge at $35, are there any other accessories needed. No, you would buy the that gauge for $35, marked down from $48, and that would include everything you would need except for the post. And I'm going to recommend a 4x4 post. And then depending on where you place it, you're either going to, if you put it in an open field, you want it 2 feet above ground level. If you're putting it in a residential area, use the appropriate spacing in the training video or training slides. And then also you'll want to mount it at about 5 feet above the ground. But do keep it away from the eaves of your house. Keep it far enough away from the eaves of your house and from trees so you're not getting additional precipitation or having precipitation blocked. Let's see. I would go ahead and get registered. In that slide presentation, in one of them it did say to go ahead and register and then get your gauge and then start reporting. So you wouldn't report anything until you actually have your gauge in place. All right, question is, can we enter this Water Wednesdays for the Texas Water Specialist, AT? And I'm going to say yes, you can. You're allowed up to 4 hours of outside webinars. So this is approximately an hour and a half. I'm a little over time. State Coordinator Bill Runyon, who's on the call, he said he's going to be in the audience. He just informed me that the 2022-2023 newsletter was released today. So it's a very lengthy newsletter. It's well put together. It has a lot of graphics in it. But check that out. It's on the website, so you can go to the CoCoRaHS website. Yes, this training does cover the presentation I just gave does cover the training for joining CoCoRaHS. The video I opened up with, the cloud and the crowd, I just encourage people to go back to that and watch that entire video because I just found it very interesting. I'm kind of a nerd, but we covered the CoCoRaHS section on that. But if you have an interest, you can go back and review that. And that probably will not be AT unless you clear it with your director. All right. Let's see. Question is there a standard amount for a significant weather event? And I'm going to defer that question to Mr. Runyon. I will be sure to gather that and email it to him because he, as a guest, he's unable to unmute at this point. But I will, any questions I don't get to, we will submit to him as the state coordinator, and he gets he responds within a 12-hour period. So I will make sure he gets these additional questions. If I did not get to yours, if I did not get to your question yet, then I will gather up these. I will ask Mr. Runyon to respond, and then I will send I hate spamming y'all with email, but I do have your email addresses, and I will try to send as few emails to you as possible. So the body will include the answers, the question and the answer in the body, and then there'll be some attachments and links to some of the other things I mentioned. With that, I'm going to say good night because I've now kept you over 6 minutes. I do want to do a quick plug though for our next Water Wednesdays. If you haven't signed up for it, it's on aquaponics, which is a type of aquaculture where you grow plants married with fish, and we'll cover that entire process. And if you have an interest in doing something in your backyard, there are designs for backyard systems as well. So wish everyone a good night. I know I blew through those slides pretty quickly, but thank you for attending. Thank you for your interest, and have a good night.